49ers Vikings recap. I was just with Rob Shue, and now I'm with the beardless Jessie Naylor here talking about the 49ers. You're going to get our takes right after this.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on three. 1, 2, 3, dominate.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. We've got a nice show today. 49ers Vikings, they played, I believe, on Saturday. It's Monday, but the biggest news of all, you look at that face, Jessie doesn't have a beard. Jessie, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Yeah, this is the first show without it. I was explaining to you, like, the Niner community hasn't seen me without a beard, which is funny because I never had a beard until the pandemic, right? So the Niner community only knows me with a beard. My family knows me basically without a beard. So it's an interesting contrast.
Yeah. And look, I appreciate you because despite your clear hatred of me, you've decided to make my show the first show without a beard. So I appreciate you for that, but also hate you as well.
Perfect. Well, you know what? I figured if I was going to show up with any face on your channel, it would be the ugliest one I could possibly throw out. So there you go. Anything I can do to sabotage you, even if it means sabotaging me.
And the funniest thing is, despite the sabotage, Jessie was the one who created that intro. So as much as he tries to sabotage me, I'm always still winning. John Mack says, you look 10 years younger.
Hey, well, that's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
I just turned 39 over the weekend, so I'll take 29.
Your 30s are better, Jessie. So
yeah,
if you're 29, perfect. Your 30s are better. You
Perfect.
Still look ugly. But no, getting back into the topics, 49ers played the Vikings this Saturday, 17-7 win. Just real quick, what were your kind of takeaways from the game in a game where all the backups pretty much played except for a couple of players?
Oh, gosh. I actually had a lot. So I'll just go through them real quick. Yeah. I have two bad and a lot of good. So let's get the bad out of the way just to be done with it. The O-line, for the most part, was disastrous. I mean, false starts, erratic protection at best. It wasn't a good display. And I know that it was the backups, kind of, right? There were a couple starters playing in that game for a long period of time. And so for me, I don't know. The offensive line's a concern. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more. And then I would say receiver drops. Again, you know, people want to talk about Lance's wobble. He throws the ball too hard, what have you. But these receivers just tend to drop the ball regardless of who's throwing. Purdy throws a good, easy pass or catchable pass, and they still drop the ball. So, you know, I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if it's a coaching thing. I don't know what concentration thing, but the drop passes is a big deal. And if that lingers into the season, that's going to be pretty frustrating to watch in big moments when there's some key drops. So to me, those were the two bad things. Before I get into good, do you want to go over a couple of things that you saw as opportunities as well?
Yeah, sure. You talk about the drops. I mean, it's not only guys that are consistently dropping the football, right? Jawan Jennings had a drop. He's been consistent. Danny Gray has had also a drop. Both of them have faced drop issues this offseason. But guys like Tanner Hudson, too, a guy who has pretty surefire hands, dropped a pass as well as the two running backs in Trey Sermon, and I believe it was one of TDP or JaMychal Hasty that dropped another pass. Ton of drops, and yet the 49ers were still able to move the football pretty well. Some things that struggled, you talked about the offensive line. One thing that I'll say, the penalties, hopefully that doesn't linger onto the season, because if you're having false start penalties, Ross Dwelley had two, forget, one of the offensive linemen had one. You had about 4 or so penalties. But let's move to the good. I'll go first here. Talking about the good, defense. You only allowed 7 points. Tackling seemed to be very good. And I'll talk about an underrated part. Tackling specifically from cornerbacks. You expect linebackers to tackle and all that, but Deommodore Lenoir had a very good game, both in coverage and tackling. and showcased potentially having some potential in the slot. So it's a good sign so far for the 49ers. I think that was one of the big added benefits after a game last weekend. While the defense played well, there were a couple of missed tackles.
Yeah, absolutely. And I put that down as well as far as defense goes. Defensive line, though, is really what stood out to me. I mean, first of all, let's just say this. I mean, one thing that I will say about this team, no matter who's on the field, they fly around. They are
Yeah.
out to hit people. Like, I don't know if that's a Hafunga thing, but I feel like that was some juice that was missing from this team really for quite some time. We didn't really have the hitters. Now it seems like Fred Warner's willing to hit on a higher level. Hafunga certainly is a missile, and I just feel like the defense is willing to get their helmet dirty a little bit, which is great to see. The defensive line, though, regardless of who they throw out there, they are at the quarterback's neck on a regular basis. So you love to see that. Okay, so I I put this into one, but really Turner and special teams. So Turner had the great play in
Right.
special teams, but he also had a key catch on a third down. Turner earned his spot on the team. I felt like this game started out a little rocky. I think he had a penalty early on,
Yeah.
but overall ended up with a very good game. I think he locked in his spot to make this team. So I think that was great for him. Special teams, just in general. First of all, no missed field goals, 3 field goals made. They were able to move the ball on special teams. It's not like it was a bunch of Mohamed Sanu just fair catching it and that was it. They were actually able to pick up yardage. They got the fumble on special teams. And that's, again, the forgotten unit with the 49ers. But if the special teams can be good, and we do expect it to be so, then this team really could make a deep run because all 3 phases, I think, can be spectacular this year. I would say QB play was also something that I looked at as a positive. I think both Purdy and Sudfeld. Listen, you don't ever want to get to your second string quarterback or
Right.
third string,
Yeah.
but I feel comfortable enough that if it gets to that, that either one of these guys can win you a game or two throughout the regular season. I don't know if I could have said that a month ago, right? Mason, another one, looked good, right?
Whew.
And I want to talk about him without putting down Sermon because a lot that's
Yeah.
like the popular thing today is put down Sermon. I don't think either guy had great looks. Mason had one or two, but I really feel like he made the most of the looks that he had. He's a force. I mean, you cannot bring him down with an arm tackle or even one tackler. He's always falling forward. He's explosive. He does a great job shifting down the line until he finds his spot and goes. I just feel like he's a really, really good player. And then, although we talked bad about the offensive line or said that there were some opportunities there, I actually think Mills played pretty good. I think Mills played pretty good.
Okay.
And it sounds like he does well in one on one scenarios. My eyes got stuck on him watching that game the second time around. And outside of a play or two, I thought he did his job very well. And I want to see it with the starters, but I feel probably more comfortable with him at right tackle than I do anybody else other than McGlinchey.
That's interesting. And real quick, let's harp on that topic for a bit about Jordan Mills. Do you think that him in the run game is still good enough for the 49ers to sustain the success that they've had running the ball to the outside? Or do you think that lack of athleticism will limit themselves when running to that side? Because I remember I saw one play where he did whiff on one block. That might have been the one or two plays that you were talking about. But do you think that's do you think his performance is sustainable in the run game? Because we know he can pass protect, but we also know he has the lack of athleticism.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that he does, and for as big as he is, he seems pretty finesse, right? He's more of a finesse blocker, a
Right.
lot of olays and just kind of pushing you out of the way and kind of letting you do your thing. So he may not fit the scheme the best, but I will say that his pass blocking made me comfortable, and I think that's a big area that they need right now. And there were times, actually, I felt like he did a good job of actually getting to the second level in the run game, which was, again, he did have the major whiff. That was something I pointed out as well in my notes, but I thought it was good enough because I feel like the other four, and with Kittle's help, they're going to be okay in the run game. It's can we protect Lance, who's, I don't know, the biggest asset in this organization? Probably a good idea to make sure that he stays upright and healthy. I think Mills gives the 49ers the best chance to do that at right tackle if McGlinchey's not playing.
Yeah. And the other topic that you talked about, special teams, you focused on Malik Turner, but overall, at least in my look when I've watched, especially the first game, have to watch the second game again, tackling on kickoffs seems better this year. It seems like they're being able to get there the first time. George Odom has been a standout to me. Do you think that that improved facet of the game is going to help the 49ers? And do you think that it was smart to invest in the special teams unit this offseason?
Yeah, definitely. And again, I know it wasn't the splashy guys that you brought in and people were looking for, we want to go all in. Like that's what people were frustrated with. But special teams, again, is a third of the game, right? And when you can have an advantage there, I mean, it won the 49ers a playoff game. It literally won the 49ers a playoff game, special teams. So if you can have an advantage there, that's always a good thing. So, yeah, man, I'm with it. I think the special teams can be pretty solid this year. And, in my opinion, the best it's ever been under Shanahan is probably a net zero. Like now they can actually be a positive. They can force a turnover. They can get a big punt return. Those things are important in the game for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Swan Song here coming in with a question about a certain guy, Oren Burks. What's been your initial analysis of Oren Burks, a guy who has flown around, made a ton of tackles so far, and I think the speed is shown.
Yeah, I again, in bringing in some of these guys, the 49ers just seem to have that extra something that's special. Like they're willing to fly around and get their helmet dirty. And that's something that has been missing, in my opinion, from this team. I mean, when you looked at the Harbaugh era, those guys were they were willing to sacrifice everything to lay people out. You did not go over the middle comfortably. And I know that it seems like Ayuk was getting frustrated with Warner and some of those other linebackers were getting into it with the Vikings. That's a good thing to me. It seems like those linebackers are a little bit more willing to lay the thunder. And I think that that's a big time positive in this league. If as long as you can control it and do it legally without getting penalties,
Yeah.
you've got to be able to hit and be willing hitters. And I just feel like the 49ers have got that this year. And that's something that hasn't always been there.
I see a question here from Danny Young, and I don't think this player might be in the next series of cuts, but I wanted to ask your opinion. Going to the running backs, we talked about the good and the bad in a way in Jordan Mason and Trey Sermon. What's your kind of analysis on the running back room, and where do you think Jordan Mason fits in on the 53-man roster?
I don't think you can risk that guy getting off the team and trying to get him onto your practice squad. I just don't see that as a possibility. I think he's too explosive. He's too good. And, the 49ers did something similar. This kid wasn't as good, but was it Salvin Ahmed, the running back for
Yeah.
pretty good in the preseason, right? They tried to stash him. You just weren't able to do it. And especially when somebody plays for the 49ers and if they look good in that system, there are too many coaches running the same system that are willing to take the chance on him. I'm curious to see what happens with Sermon. I mean, to me, he's the one. Are the 49ers willing to let go of a third round pick that they just took a year ago? I don't know. I mean, they hung on to some guys probably way too long in the past.
Jalen Hurd.
Jalen Hurd, right? That's the one that I'm thinking of for the most part. Yeah, they hung on to guys way too long. So I don't know. I don't know if they're willing to do it. And I'm not saying that he necessarily should be cut, but he's got to be on the bubble at the very least. Like they've got to be looking at it unless there's something that they know that we haven't been able to see thus far. I don't know, man. I really wanted Sermon to be successful, but right now I'm not seeing it.
Yeah. And you talked about Trey Sermon, and I think the criticism, I don't necessarily think it's warranted, but I don't necessarily think that there shouldn't be any because Trey Sermon has performed well in practice, but when it comes to the live television where everybody's eyes are on him instead of a certain few, he hasn't performed, right? And you don't blame Trey Sermon the entire time. Some of those plays where there are plays where the offensive line whiffs or certain players whiff, and there's just not a running lane for Trey Sermon to go, hence the 0, 1, 2 yard gains. But there's also times where he's indecisive. That was also on feature in camp. When he's not indecisive, he's good. You see the ability in him being able to move, but overall, there are certain factors like that and the emergence of Jordan Mason, which has really been coming since the beginning of training camp, that is definitely putting things into question. Do you think, though, the 49ers should carry 5 running backs on this team and keep Jeff Wilson Jr. and Trey Sermon on this roster, or no?
No, they can't carry 5. To me, it comes down to Wilson, Sermon, and Hasty. They got to choose two of those 3 to let go. And I think coming into camp, the prevailing thought was the older guys would be out, right? We'd probably see Hasty go. We'd probably see Wilson go. Now I'm not so sure. I mean, I think if you're keeping the 4 best guys, then Sermon would be off this team. But if you want to just stay young in the position and try to develop, then Sermon's probably the 4th back, right? So to me, I don't know. I'm curious to see what the 49ers do with it, but you cannot carry 4. There's no reason to carry 4, not in my opinion. There's too many. I think, what was it? Drake just got cut today. Like, there's too many veteran running backs out there that are decent that you can bring into the practice squad, or, do whatever you got to do to make it tick. So no, you can't carry 5.
Yeah, and the other thing is, especially in this system, you can just make running backs work in a way. Undrafted players, that's why a lot of fans harp on the 49ers for drafting 3rd-round players, because undrafted players have continuously worked. In fact, Jeff Wilson Jr. Was an undrafted player. Elijah Mitchell, a 6th-round pick. Jordan Mason, an undrafted player. Hasty, an undrafted player. And I think this is going to be the toughest cut down, because I think all of the 6 running backs that are vying for one of those 4 spots have looked good in the offseason at times. Hasty has looked explosive at times. Jeff Wilson Jr. has been reliable and gotten first-team carries at times and looked really well on that last week of training camp. Then Trey Sermon in practice has looked solid as well. I think out of talent so far, at least in the games, he's definitely been the worst running back. It's hard to judge who really has been the worst overall, but it's going to be the toughest, in my opinion, the toughest cut down for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to me, I think Hasty for sure should go, just because I don't know. I don't want him to be my running back. Like, he's the 3rd down guy, but I really feel like you should get your best players on the field, and Juszczyk should be the 3rd down back. Like, I've been saying it for a few weeks now. I just think that he's the best player that you can get in that position. He catches well, he blocks well. I want him to be my 3rd down back if possible. If not, I do think Sermon, for as much as he might lack sometimes in being indecisive, I think he's a good pass catcher. I know he did have the drop this game, but overall, I actually think he's a pretty good pass catcher out of the backfield. I could see him being a 3rd down back as well.
Yeah, you could see that too for sure. And one thing about Sermon, this game, he entered the game with an ankle injury, which Kyle Shanahan, he didn't indicate it, but it might have been a reason for the lackluster performance in which he looked a little slower. Now, going into this week, I think Shanahan has already ruled Elijah Mitchell out for the Thursday game, saying they expect him back after the game. And the 49ers should play their starters like they have in the past in that final preseason game, meaning Trey Sermon, if he's healthy, might get the brunt of the load with the first-team offense. And that leads us to, do you think that this is a make-or-break game for Trey Sermon in a way, or do you think that their decision has also been handled behind the scenes?
I feel like if Sermon's truly on the cusp, like some of us think he is, then it is a make or break game for him. But then there's, again, also the possibility that Shanahan's already made up his mind and he's like, listen, I'm keeping the kid. I don't care. I picked him in the 3rd round. I've seen enough. I want to develop him, and he's going to make the team no matter what. So I just think if he makes this team, I think that was probably already decided going into this game, right? So
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I don't know, man. Like, what would you do if you were in this situation? What would you do? Because I personally am keeping the best guys. I'm letting Sermon go. But I also wouldn't have drafted him in the 3rd round. I wouldn't have drafted Ty Davis Price in the 3rd round, right? Like, you've got the running game coordinators and play caller to be a good running team. So to me, the whole thing didn't make sense. But here we are.
It's tough for sure. And for me, I'm looking at, okay, we've got a group of running backs. How do I make this running back group interdependent of each other? Not necessarily have the same player, whereas you can use them in different instances while also having guys capable if one of the top guys, like Elijah Mitchell, gets injured, which is why I'm focusing more so on the battle between Mason and Wilson. Because to me, they both are the best third down backs on the team right now. They both serve better as third down backs because Mason and Wilson both have the ability to run with power, as we've seen. And Mason and Wilson also have the ability to catch the ball, run routes, and things like that. So to me, I think the battle is there just because they kind of have a similar role. Whereas you have Elijah Mitchell, the guy who can hit the edge. You have Tyrion Davis-Price, the guy who runs with power, able to lower the shoulder with good acceleration. And then Trey Sermon, a guy who works well inside the tackles. And if you point to the Seattle game from last year, you saw the potential of him with Lance. And so that's kind of where I'm looking with that battle group.
Yeah, and see, that's the other interesting point because it was a small sample size, but even during this preseason, when Lance was on the field, he actually looked decent again, right? Like it seemed to be better than when he's not. And so I guess the other question is how much do they plan on running out of shotgun? I mean, even when Lance was in, there's a lot of under center, right? And it was a small sample size, but that's something Lance does bring to the table. He played under center 39% of the time in college. He's just fine turning his back to the defense, really good at play action. Are they going to run a lot out of shotgun? I don't know. If that's the plan, then I think Sermon probably does fit very well there.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking about Thursday, the biggest part of the equation, the guy handing the ball off to Trey Sermon at times, will be Trey Lance. And we get a question here before we talk about Trey Lance. Is it me or does Trey Lance struggle more with accuracy without pads? That's kind of been a theme. What is kind of your take on that?
Yeah, it is funny because I was taking note of that again today. The Sunday after the game was without pads, struggled. Before pads went on, it was kind of iffy. And then again today without pads, struggled a little bit. I don't know. I don't know why that is. I don't know what goes into that, but it is something that I have taken note of for sure.
And the last part about Trey Lance overall, what are you kind of expecting from him in this next game? Is there anything like I understand it's a preseason game, but you are finally getting with the first team offense. I'm not saying anything in terms of stats, but what is your expectation of how he carries the offense in the 1 to 2 drives that he gets to play on Thursday?
I want to see everything that I saw the last game. I mean, to me, just his poise in the pocket. I don't know about you. I thought he was a completely different player, Rohan. I mean, when you watched him last year when he played, happy feet. I call it organized chaos because he was constantly moving around. Like he wasn't settling in the pocket. He was constantly looking to get out. Not that he was seeing ghosts or anything, but he wasn't comfortable or it didn't look like he was ever comfortable. Game one already, preseason, he almost looked too comfortable at times. I was like, bud,
Yeah.
like, can we speed up the footwork and get this throw out? Like what, on the out to Danny Gray, I'm like, how nonchalant can this man be? So yeah, that's what I want to see. I want to see him look comfortable. I want to see him shrug off the tackles. And really, I'm more looking for the offensive line. I want to know how well they can protect him. Like, is he getting any time or is it as soon as he hits that back foot, he's got somebody instantly in his face? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think that's a very good assessment, right? Because you're right. He looked good. In a way, he looked nonchalant as well. And I saw your interview with his quarterback coach. He agreed with some of the points that you brought up about that nonchalantness. And I think, yeah, can he maneuver the offense, but can he also do it at an NFL level pace? Will Kyle Shanahan give him the opportunity to maybe run some hurry up where he seemed a little more confident, but also seemed a little better, at least in training camp? Will he get an opportunity like that, or will that not arise? Those kind of things as well. But more so, how does he maneuver the offense? How does the offensive line protect him? And how can the offense move? Because this is going to be first team against first team, a defense that he also played last year in the Houston Texans in week 16, one that he might have a little more comfortability with.
Yeah, and the other thing is, does he make the right decisions consistently? I mean, that was one thing. It was a small sample size, but I felt like every pass he threw last game, it was the right decision. Like where
Yeah.
he chose to throw was perfect, right?
Yeah.
And so I know defenses can be a little bit vanilla early on, and so it is what it is. But even today, and listening to his struggles, it sounds like he was making the right decisions every single time. So that's great. Now, can we be accurate on a consistent basis? Is that a practice thing? Will that bleed over into the games? Time will tell. But to me, like, all the mental intangibles are there. The game is slowed down for him. He's not rushing anything. He is making the right decisions. He clearly has control of this offense and what Shanahan wants this offense to be. So to me, those are the most important things. Now it's about getting the repetition and just staying consistently accurate.
Definitely. We got a question here from Flav, who asks about a certain player on the team, Chakravarthi Ward, concerned or not, because he obviously is injured currently. Another player from the Chiefs, D Ford, remember, the guy who has been notoriously injured on the 49ers. Are you worried about Chakravarthi Ward and his injury, which I believe is a core muscle strain, and he might be available for week 1, but has not practiced yet?
No, I'm not. I'm not worried till he misses games. Now, if he starts missing games and they paid him some big money, yeah, that will be that'll be a worry for sure. And I agree. Stay away from all Chiefs players at all costs. Like, that would be twice that you got completely burned paying big money to bring in a guy from that organization. The Chiefs are smart, right? Like, they let people go for a reason. So maybe pay attention to that. But no, I think Ward's a very good player. It sounds like the secondary has been locked down when him and Mosley are playing. I'm not worried about it yet, but we'll see. We'll see if it lingers.
Mark here brings up a good point, considering Trey Lance, seeing the ball going outside the numbers. Is that something that you are necessarily worried about, given what you've heard in training camp and what you saw in the first game? Or is that something that you believe will just come with timing with his receivers, which should happen sooner than later?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it does seem to be an issue from what practice reports are, and then it did show itself in that game. I mean, all I can do is go off of what I've seen and dissect
Right.
it accordingly. What I saw was a footwork thing, and it wasn't that he has bad footwork. It was he was too nonchalant in the pocket, and by the time that Gray got to the top of his route, I was like, "Oh gosh, I got to rush this thing because I'm not on my back foot, ready to fire the ball." And so it sailed on him a little bit. One thing I will say again is I did take two positives from that play. One, he made the right decision. Two, he can make the power throws. And that is absolutely a power throw. When we talk about arm strength in the NFL, everybody wants to point to a deep ball. Can you throw a deep ball? That's not a power throw. That doesn't show arm strength. I mean, there's a lot of touch on deep throws. Arm strength is, can you be on one hash, get the ball 10 to 15, 20 yards downfield, outside the numbers, far side of the field? That's a power throw. He consistently can make those. His arm is not an issue. Arm fatigue is not an issue when it comes to those. So, yeah, I mean, there's some good things that I definitely took away for sure. But again, that comes down to the consistency. Is he going to be consistently accurate early on? I don't know. And that's the biggest question mark.
Definitely, definitely. Earlier today, we got some news. 49ers signed to Sean Gibson, cut Austin Mack on, I believe, on Thursday. The 49ers have to cut down to an 80-man roster, and the 49ers likely will do that tomorrow or on Wednesday before they fly out. Do you have any anticipation on who you think will get cut in this next set? But more so, 53-man roster-wise, do you think that there are any surprise players that you might see getting cut or staying on the 53-man roster?
Man, I got to be real. I really have tried to keep my mind off that, cut day, especially when you start to really know these players and hear their names a
Hardest
lot.
one, the hardest
It's
one.
hard. It's hard, man. Yeah, it is hard. There's a lot of good players on this team. There's going to be some surprise cuts. Who they are or where it comes from. I got to imagine D line's probably going to be one of those areas where you're like, damn, really him? Running back again, if Sermon gets cut, I think that would be a surprise for a lot of people. I think most people, even though they think he should be cut, that would surprise a lot of people. I think most people expect that the third round pick's going to keep his job at least for one more year, keep his roster spot. So, yeah, I think there's going to be some surprises for sure. The secondary, you could see a surprise out of there. As far as bringing in Gibson, I mean, a little bit older. I don't know if it's a camp body to get through the rest of camp or if they really think he can come and steal somebody's job. He has made a Pro Bowl. That was many years ago, however. I don't know. We'll see. I gotta imagine it's going to come from running back and defensive line. If a surprise comes, though, that would be my guess.
Yeah, definitely. And
Maybe
talking
offensive line too. Actually, maybe
that could
offensive
be,
line.
yeah, that was exactly what I was about to say. Because the 49ers, they've got a ton of bodies, maybe not a ton of frontline starters, but a ton of potential with that room. You've got the undrafted guys like Jason Poe, maybe even Donovan West if you include him there, but also a guy like Nick Zakelj, where all of these three guys could potentially get cut, or one of them could potentially make the roster, depending on how many they carry. Because it depends. Do they carry 8? Do they carry 9? Because it seems like 7 are locks right now, especially after the 49ers benched or didn't play Colton McKivitz alongside Daniel Brunskill. Then you got to factor in Jalen Moore, IR, who likely will be an IR candidate to start the year. That's 8 guys already. Do the 49ers carry one more, or do they elect to carry a player at a different position?
Yeah, I almost wonder if Verrett and McGlinchey start out the year on IR, right? And then that means that you've got more people that you can keep and visually keep eyes on and see ultimately who's worth making this team when those guys come back. I don't know, man. The McGlinchey thing's interesting. I don't know what's going on there. I hope
Super
it's not
interesting.
serious, but
Yeah,
starting 4 new offensive linemen, it
that'd be
doesn't
tough.
get worse than that. With
Yeah.
quarterback going into year 1 as a starter, it doesn't get more worrisome than that.
And the one thing that I said on Rob's show, the one fact that went unnoticed when Mike McGlinchey was announced to be out this week and Colton McKivitz to start, McGlinchey got a PRP injection last week. PRP injections normally take about 4 to 6 weeks to recover from. McGlinchey's hopefully is on that on the former side with that 4-week timeline, but still that post puts him really, really close to week 1. And do you want to risk him playing week 1 with the potential of re-injuring that leg, which has bothered him obviously this offseason at times, and he's recovering from a quad injury as well?
Yeah, man. I don't know. This is like biggest panic button ever. Remember going in. I want our old problems back. Remember our old problems before training camp started? It was like, how's the interior of the line going to do? At least we've got our bookend tackles. I want our old problems back because this new problem, I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of it right now at all. Can we
Remember
get
when
the old one,
everyone was
please?
talking about, oh my God, the interior is going to be a huge issue. We've got these 2 stout tackles, and then the interior is the issue. No, now it's back to the outside because we've got who knows who's going to play at right tackle. I'd assume it's likely McKivitz to start in week 1 if McGlinchey's out, given how the 49ers view him. But wow, the turntables for sure this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, and Trent Williams might be the best player in football, but he can't block 2 guys, so they got to figure
Yeah.
something out.
We don't got 5 of them. We only got 1. But
Right.
continuing with the position battles, I saw a comment in here earlier about the second quarterback position. Brock Purdy, Nate Sudfeld. Obviously, both played, got a majority of the playing time, and alternated, surprisingly, in this past game rather than one playing in one quarter, the other playing in the next quarter or something like that, or half and half. Do you think that there's any quarterback competition? And do you even foresee the 49ers carrying 3 quarterbacks on this roster?
No, they don't traditionally carry 3. I think both those guys, however, can sneak into practice squad. Actually, here's another surprise. Do they keep Jimmy on the 53 and wait until before
Now,
week 1 to cut him? That's
this
a
is a
question.
very good question because Jimmy Garoppolo, for those of you that don't know, Jimmy Garoppolo's contract becomes guaranteed on September 10th at 4
Mhm.
p.m. Eastern time. The 49ers can choose for the next, what is it? It'd be 12 days after that, or 13 days after that August 31st deadline or 30th deadline. They can roster him on the 53 and then wait 12 days to see if a trade materializes before releasing Garoppolo at no cost. The only thing is, there is a huge cost if you release him or if you keep him, because not only are you ruining the chances of maybe keeping one of those other quarterbacks who you definitely would be higher on for the future, especially considering it's Brock Purdy, who has 4 years of team control, you'd also be losing out on another roster spot. Like, imagine the 49ers chose to keep Jimmy Garoppolo over Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason being cut, 49ers Twitter would go crazy.
Dude, if that. Oh my gosh. I don't know, man. I think that might be the other surprise is they keep him on the 53 and then cut him, just before and then
Yeah.
bring one of those guys up from the practice squad. I don't know, man. But if it's Mason or Jimmy G, dude, yeah, it's going to be hell to pay for sure. 49ers fans will not be happy. So we'll see how they play that. But I think that might be the biggest surprise if
That could
it
be
ends up
because
happening.
Mayoko said earlier today on a radio show, the 49ers believe that Garoppolo is going to Seattle if he gets cut. So if they don't want that, I mean, I personally do not care that much, but if they don't want that, you know what this team could definitely do.
I mean, we're talking 12 days to let him. I don't care. Like, and please, on 3 weeks, throw him out against the 49ers defense. I would love nothing more. I would love nothing more than that because I know it's going to end horribly for him. So let him go to Seattle. Like, I don't know, man. Like, is the strategy? But the thing is, Shanahan, he's really weird about this stuff.
Yeah.
Remember the quarterback position last year? He's like, I don't know, like the guest game is a big deal. It's like, no, you're playing the Lions. It's not that big of a deal. He loves having the upper hand any way he can get it strategically. And I feel like he's just strange enough to where it's like, yeah, no, this is a strategic advantage if I keep Jimmy G on the roster, knowing that we're going to cut him 10 days later, because if he ends up in Seattle, we want him to have 8 days to prepare for us. Like, all right.
Oh my God. The storylines. Flav coming in, talking about Brock Purdy, thinking he has to keep Purdy on the roster, thinks he can get wins if Trey goes down and you have a valuable trade chip. Do you think that you need to keep Purdy on the 53 though for that, or you can keep him on the practice squad? Because if you go to your second, like to me, last year only 9 teams of the 32 kept 3 quarterbacks. Of those, only 3 were playoff teams. And to me, if you're keeping that third quarterback, what's the chance you're going to that third quarterback? And if you go to that third quarterback, what's the chance that you're going to have a good season, or if your season isn't over if you're already going to your third quarterback?
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. To me, I like Purdy, right? And I've actually, you can find tweets of me 2 years ago talking about Brock Purdy. I really do like him. But I think Nate Sudfeld's a little bit more important than what people realize for this year. Like, do you really want to go into a season? Let's say Sudfeld gets picked up. You actually might be able to sneak him easier onto a practice squad, to be real with you. And maybe that's the move.
Definitely, because he doesn't have to go through waivers and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. So that might be the easier way to go. So maybe that's the route you take. But having Sudfeld, I think, is actually important. I mean, Lance talked frequently
About
how much Sudfeld helped him, right? And do you really want Lance to be the most veteran presence in the quarterback room? Really, like year 2, he's the most veteran presence. Brock Purdy's a rookie, and so Lance has all the cachet. Like, I want a veteran there that can watch film with him, help break him down. I mean, Josh Allen talks about it. I forget who the quarterback was that was on the practice squad last year, but he talked about that, how that quarterback holds him accountable in the film room and makes him a better player. Like, they asked him, they gave him an opportunity. What about Dayball? What about this? What? No. It's the quarterback on the practice squad that helped me. I don't remember if it was Barkley. I don't remember who it was, but either way, he finds value in that. And this is a veteran. This is, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the league. If he finds value in that, I got to imagine Trey Lance finds value in that. So I think Sudfeld's more important than what people want to give him credit for.
I think so too. I think that Sudfeld, like the mental game as well. You talked about how Lance has talked about how Sudfeld has helped him grow, which is important because he had Garoppolo in that room as well. Like having that veteran presence, Lance is attributed like that veteran presence as being helpful in his development. I think Sudfeld also, with his $2 million guaranteed cap hit, you keep him for that reason as well. And Purdy can take that Sudfeld path when Sudfeld's off the roster next year, going into, I believe, what would be his age 30 season. Then you have Purdy come in as a solid backup level quarterback. But right now, I think Sudfeld is the better option. I think he's the better player right now overall. And I think he's also better for what your objective is, which is mentoring Trey Lance and having his development get accelerated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do see a comment where it says Sudfeld is not, he I know he hasn't played a lot of games, but just being in the league for 5 years,
Right.
there's an art to being a backup quarterback. I'm sorry, there is. If there wasn't, Hoyer wouldn't be around still. That guy has a job every year. Like clockwork, that guy has a job. There is an art to being a backup quarterback, and Sudfeld definitely has mastered that. He knows exactly how to go and help out the starter. He knows how to be that kind of extra coach out there. I think Sudfeld does bring more to the table other than just being a good player, right? Like, which he's not. He's not a great player. Like, but there's more to being a backup quarterback than just that.
Yeah. And the last topic, want to hit this because it's actually something I want to see. Get your take on. Not on our list, but Vic Fangio, I believe yesterday, came out and said, I'm interested in a job in 2023, maybe even a coordinator job. Now, Vic Fangio was seen at practice earlier this offseason during the OTA period. We've got a defensive coordinator who likely will be headed for a head coaching job if he continues his trajectory. Do you envision that as a possibility, given that there are so many Vic Fangio disciple defenses, and this one could fit as well?
I would love for that to be the case. I mean, because here's the thing is Fangio is actually young enough to where he could be here for a while. Right.
Right.
And it seems like he probably is not going to go the head coaching route ever. Like he's
Yeah.
young enough to be here for a while, but old enough to probably never get a head coaching job again, which is a win. So you're not going to have the revolving door at the defensive coordinator the way that you've had, losing Saleh, and then we're losing D'Amico Ryans this offseason. Like we just are. The defense is going to be really good. He's going to be really good again. He almost left after 1 year. He will be somewhere else next year, which is great for him. I think
And the one
Fangio's
thing
the
about
perfect person to slide
continue
in.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say I think he's the perfect person to slide in. Now, the issue that we have 3-4 versus the 4-3.
That's
I mean, it's
exactly
a
what I was about to say.
whole different philosophy.
Yeah.
So do these pieces. So we have to look at it. Bosa, mainstay. Armstead, mainstay. Kinlaw, hopefully, mainstay. Those are the three that you're really building this line around, and Jackson. So if those are the four guys, what does that look like? How do you divvy that out? Because none of them are big enough to be a nose,
Right.
and just eat up right in the middle. Kinlaw's a big boy, but he's not 330,
He's only 292
340.
now. He
Right, that's
slimmed
what I'm
down. He's
saying.
292.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's where it gets interesting. And I don't know. I mean, Armstead has been forced in and out in a bunch of different styles of play throughout his career. And so I think he would be able to make the transition. I don't know about everybody else. I mean, Bosa is a guy that's rushed with his hand in the dirt forever. Can he make? I mean, standing up is a different deal. It's a different thing. So I don't know.
And the one thing about it, I think Fangio is the one coordinator where you can go to him, and I think he can change his philosophy for the 49ers. Because Fangio he's one of the smartest defensive coordinators out there. And like you said, the biggest take with Fangio, the 49ers keep having these young and rising defensive coordinators. But they have one mainstay on their defensive coaching staff right now, Chris Kocurek, who doesn't seem like he wants to rise up the ranks. He wants to just do what he wants to do. And then you have Vic Fangio, who likely won't get another head coaching job, but he can be a mainstay at coordinator for the remainder of his coaching career, which provides you continuity on that defense. And it also allows Fangio to get acclimated into the 4-3 system, learn maybe in 2023 while this defense is good enough where he can still translate like 2 NFL wins and then continue to build off that success for future years.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know, man. I don't know. And then
It's
the question
tough.
is would Fangio be willing to mess with his system or tweak his system to make it work, right?
And would
He's
he
been in the league for a long
incorporate more
time.
man coverage? Because the 49ers, Kyle wants that. Fangio, That's the other part about Fangio.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions there. Again, I think age-wise he matches up perfect. It's just schematically, does he match up perfect? And is he willing to change it up a little bit? I got to imagine that he's a good enough coach that he could tweak some things to make it work around the 49ers. But is he willing to do that? I don't know. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. But if that happens, you have two good coaches, Kocurek, the best defensive line coach in the NFL.
Yes.
And then you have Vic Fangio there. But again, that's all contingent on D'Amico Ryans and where does he go after the year. Should get head coaching opportunities again. We'll see what happens. But Jessie, overall, this has been a fun show. Thank you so much for coming on, even with your ugly face. I appreciate you, but no. Guys, be sure to subscribe to Last Second Sports. You know, he's always putting out great content. He's one of the best in the business at doing it, and he always supports everybody, 49ers fans, 49ers content creators. So always appreciate you for coming on.
Absolutely, brother. And you're going off to college here soon, right?
I've got 6 days. Yeah, that's why.
Dang, that's
I wanted
crazy.
this week to be that week, but I've got 6 days. Yeah.
Well, good luck, man. I know we'll stay in touch for sure. I'm sure your shows will change as far as times and how often, but definitely rooting for you there. And mainly because you're not going to be in the community as much. That's actually what I'm excited about the most.
Yeah. And I'm excited. I don't have to see your face that much. Thank God.
Especially this one.
Exactly. By the time I'm back, you're going to finally have that grown out and everybody's going to be happy. But no, appreciate you so much. Have a great rest of your night, guys. I am on with Sunil, I think, in about 15 minutes or so. So be sure to check that out on his channel. Will be a lot of fun. But Jessie, thank you. And guys, have